today. I know we only have a half an hour, so we'll just start diving in. So I'll have each one of you go down and just give a quick introduction on who you are.
Okay, cool. Thank you very much, Jonathan. Appreciate the invite today. Elizabeth, thank you for hosting the panel here. Panelists, Chris Bambury here, entrepreneur by trade. Most recently, I want to say, I was teaching metaverse and blockchain course at University of Washington. It was actually the first 4 credit, which is super cool. There, I got into blockchain generally in 2014 when I was living in China, looking out to get beyond capital controls and help my Chinese friends invest in companies. And then that really got me into blockchain, and after that I actually came back to UW in 2016 and did a thesis with the Comparative History of Ideas department on a theoretical social network to make ideas actionable.
Awesome. Christy?
Hi, Christy Udis. I'm a professor at Portland State University in Portland, Oregon. So I'm the founder of our blockchain program down there. So we have a 6-course academic program there. We are at the end of our 3rd year right now. Great program, and we have undergrads, grads, and community members. So let me know if you want to take some classes. My background is I started as an accounting professor, but I've been teaching a lot of data analytics, IT, cybersecurity, and then more recently blockchain and a metaverse course too this term, which is really fun.
Awesome. And Isaac?
Hi, Elizabeth, Christine, Jonathan, thanks for having us. It's great to be here. I'm the managing director of the Filecoin Techstars Accelerator as well as Techstars Seattle. And interference, okay. I am let's see if this is better. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've started 2 companies, I've run 3, I've raised a couple $100 million for my companies along the way and had 3 good exits. I was a traditional venture capitalist for about 10 years and have been a long-time angel. And my own exposure to crypto was in 2013 when I was running a large green data center in Iceland that I founded, and I came across these folks called Bitcoin miners and sold them many megawatts of power and worth millions of dollars, and that's how I started the dive into crypto.
Awesome. So Isaac, let's start with you. You mentioned your connection to Techstars. So how is your organization tied to Web3 startup education?
If you don't know, Techstars is one of the world's biggest venture accelerators. We run about 50 accelerators worldwide. We have, call it industry agnostic programs like Techstars Seattle, but we also have very vertically specific programs. And in the last 2 years, we've actually spun up 2 crypto-specific accelerators. Both of them are sponsored programs. So the one that I run is sponsored by a company that I assume most of you know called Protocol Labs. They're the developer of the Filecoin and IPFS protocols. There are a bunch of Filecoin companies out there today, and they approached us and said, "Hey, we really want to support the Filecoin ecosystem. So would you set up a crypto-specific accelerator to help these folks?" And the program is a nice blend of traditional Techstars 0 to 1 best practices for how to get your startup off the ground, combined with some very crypto-specific education and mentorship. So mentorship is a big part of the Techstars experience. We have Chris, who's an awesome super mentor, and
Appreciate
makes a
it.
big difference in people's lives.
Awesome. And then Christy, how is your organization tied to Web3 startup education?
So we're in a business school, and we're a little more focused on enterprise blockchain level work, and so we think a lot about the consortia level and what are the barriers and the resources needed to effectively join and create consortia. But we have spawned a few startups from the student population there because we focus so much on kind of operations and strategy and creating minimum viable products and what partners do you need and all that stuff. So if they've got the tech side, then they have all the ingredients that they need to really get going. So we've had a few interesting startups, most notably maybe the Provenance Chain Network in Seattle that you might have heard of.
That's awesome. And then Chris.
Okay, well, very interesting. Pretty much seeding blockchain at UW. I mean, there's been a blockchain society there for about 4 years, I believe, that is very active. Their president was actually in my class. It was very interesting there. But kind of coming back, what I did with my class is I seeded in the humanities department because I wanted it to be diversity by design. So like we're looking at the philosophical aspects of like what blockchain and Web3 can do in the metaverse. Like why do it? Like why are we doing this? Not just like for speculation and arbitrage and all that kind of stuff. It can be world changing. So what I'm trying to build and what we're all trying to build is like foundations. Like from a philosophical standpoint, obviously you need computer science and tech and all that kind of stuff in there. But really build the foundations where it's not just focused on the technological aspects, but the philosophical aspects and why you do it, why we should do this.
I love it. So all of you guys were talking about, being able to help groups of students or groups of startups. So do you feel like right now in the market that it's, that you have to like pull people into your program, or is it like a big push that like everyone's just super excited to get in? How do you feel like is the reception? Is there abundance, or do you still feel like it's very small and nascent? And so maybe Christy, I'll go with you first on how's the reception going?
Well, we have no marketing budget, and so I think we could have more people. Portland State's a kind of a community school, and the students are mostly working parents. So to add on a lot of classes is difficult for them. So many of the students that we get are from outside, and they come just to take the blockchain certificate. So I guess a little of both. So we kind of try to drag in the students that are already at Portland State, but then we get a lot of outsiders who want to join too.
Yeah, and are you usually over capacity? Is there overcapacity in waitlisting in these classes, or do you feel like there's still room?
On some of them, this metaverse class that we taught this term, we got headsets to lend to the students and that kind of stuff. So that one was quite popular. And we have one that's called Blockchain and Exponential Tech, which is a cool one with, a lot of new stuff, 3D printing, drones, stuff like that. So that one's popular too. But yeah, so it's kind of a mix. But no, we're not oversubscribed. That would be a nice problem to have.
Yeah, exactly. What about you, Chris?
Like I mentioned, UW Blockchain, so there is an absolute desire. I want to say they have a few hundred active members. So like that, East University of Washington, there is a demand for it. My class, I was a first-time instructor, so they limited me to 12 students. Had to turn away a ton, which totally sucks, honestly, because there's so many brilliant minds and a lot of diverse people out there that I wanted to add to it. But hopefully, since it was a success, that we can open it up more and lay foundations for a pathway for more people to get in.
And Isaac, what about you? I mean, you've looked at all these different Techstars programs. You've seen the demand. What are you seeing right now for the Web3 demand?
Yeah, I think there's no question that there's a surge in demand for education and mentorship in the field, especially for entrepreneurs who are coming from a more traditional Web2 background. They want to learn about the space. Like most Techstars programs, it's a very selective effort. We still do a ton of outreach because we want to find the best founders. In our case, we have a little bit of a marketing budget, so we do a bunch of outreach, but there's always more. For any Techstars program, there's always going to be more demand than their spaces. So, yeah.
That's awesome. So it is good to know that we are seeing this demand. It's not just us in our own bubble, but we're actually seeing this pent up demand, and that you guys are catering to it and helping. So what are the educational topics that are unique for Web3 compared to just regular tech education? And what's uniquely being taught in your programs? And so, Isaac, let's start with you. You were kind of mentioning some of this, is that yes, you have regular Techstars, umbrella programming, but then there is specific to Web3 blockchain. So maybe do you want to kind of hit on some of those topics?
Yeah, so obviously the tokenization or the potential tokenization of everything opens up unbelievable new frontiers for capital formation, for society, for governance. It's completely new foundations in a lot of areas. And so just to start with the financing thing, obviously the token issuance is a brand new way of raising capital that was not previously available much before, well, a little bit before 2017, but not much. But it completely shakes capitalism at its foundations potentially. So we have both mentorship and workshops on things like tokenomics and tokenization. Of course, you have to be aware of the compliance and regulatory environment. We have a great workshop coming up on that that's led by the chief compliance officer at PayPal, who've gotten very deep into crypto. We do a bunch of Web3 sort of marketing and community formation stuff that's a little more specific to that. And of course, working with protocols like Filecoin and IPFS. So a lot of the basic stuff, but again, a lot of it is driven by mentors because every company has their own specific needs or questions, different levels of sophistication in those areas. We have one company that's very sophisticated on its tokenomics and tokenization already, whereas others are just at the beginning of their journey. So.
Awesome. Then Christy?
Well, since ours is a blockchain program, everything involves Web3. So, we're in business, so we intersect a lot with finance and supply chain strategy, that kind of stuff. But we also have computer science classes integrated into the program. So, where they're just really learning the Web3 tech. So, I think that everything that we have done and will do is totally directed in that, that format.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And me, so actually it's more fundamentally like how I ran my class, or I'm running my classes. Like, I'm of the opinion that, like, if someone, like, I'm an entrepreneur, so I'm all about startups. Like, if you want to teach people, okay, first of all, learning by doing. So, like, kind of like, honestly, throwing off the deep end. This is like how I learned, how I taught myself blockchain, just went into it. So I took that to my students, like learning by doing. And then also some aspects, okay, so DAOs are obviously super important, like in the future of blockchain, how do communities come together and reach common goals. So I ran my class, not a straight DAO, because I was the instructor, I had to like have a syllabus and some of these things, but like ran it with complete student input, whereas the common goal that we had was my thesis to a certain extent. I wasn't saying, hey, build my thesis, but it's like, hey, this is something that we can do. I think it's something kind of cool. And so I'm gonna throw you off the deep end, learning by doing. I did learn by doing by bringing in founders from various Web3 companies like in the industry and having them do 1 hour with the students each week, and then we do an hour of like feedback and that kind of stuff. And then the students would kind of decide how they wanted to proceed. So my syllabus changed like throughout the quarter. The beginning and the end were the same, but the middle was kind of totally different. And the end was pretty much how I thought it would be, but it became something that wasn't just mine, it became something that was all of ours. So that's really what blockchain is and Web3 is about. Like, it's community and it's everyone's. And so I wanted to really, again, not just the topics, but like how do you teach something and how you teach Web3.
Chris, I'm going to steal that idea. I love that
Absolutely.
idea. Running your class as a DAO, because the governance is such a huge topic. So the extent that they learn those topics by doing them in the classroom, it's perfect.
Sorry, it's pretty. The students were taken aback at first. They're like, this is non-hierarchical. Like, I'm used to listening to the professor. Then like, I was like, please challenge me. Like, I want to be challenged, And so that was something that I guess they hadn't particularly experienced in higher education. So like, that was super cool. So like, yeah, sounds like a good idea. Let's do that. Pivot continuously towards a common goal.
That's awesome. I love that. So, okay, talk to me about all these like amazing programs that you have teaching. So what about someone who is on the outside wanting to be educated? Are all programs evaluated the same? What are some pitfalls that students who want to learn more about Web3 and get educated, get these startup helps, what are some of the red flags that they should be aware of, if at all, if there are any? And Chris, maybe you want to start this one?
Sure. I mean, like, it's straight up tech focus right now. If someone want to think about blockchain, okay, what's either tech or like finance, I guess, like arbitrage and like speculation, that kind of stuff. And again, I want to bring back the fundamental philosophy of blockchain and humanities and that kind of stuff. I think someone needs to look at like why you're doing something. Like when you do a startup, like you need a problem, you need a solution, and like I think people are going in to blockchain now with like just like I don't know. Honestly, I'm not sure. They want to make money pretty much at this point, and people to understand what you can do with blockchain and Web3. That it is democratizing. It is communal inclusion, and yeah. That's,
Christy, do you have any red flags that our students in the audience should be aware of or think about?
Gosh, there's so much bad education out there. I'm sure you've all experienced it when you've been trying to Google something and learn some specific aspect. So, I mean, there's some really good certificates, and then there's some really bad ones. I think sometimes like Consensus has a good boot camp. I think there's some LinkedIn courses that are, seem to be pretty well vetted and they're good. So there's kind of a handful of good certificate education. I mean, I think I'm biased. Of course, I'm a university professor, but I think, we're very rigorous. We require projects with businesses. We have advisors and all that, so I think those university courses are probably fine no matter where you take them, but but a lot of the certificates and things, just those short courses online even ones run by, big universities, I guess, can be pretty bad in my experience.
Isaac, what about you?
The only thing I'd add to that is obviously there's such a plethora of stuff out there, and you all only have so much time in your lives to dedicate to this, and so I think it's really, I guess my guidance is really know what you want to get out of the educational experience and make sure that the one that you're applying to or thinking about investing your time into is the right one. And I guess the other thing to just remember is that it is such a dynamic and rapidly moving space that any static content that we might give you today, in 2 months, it's very likely not going to be nearly as relevant in a lot of cases. So I think a lot of it is also about building the networks around you to, who the smartest people in different areas, who's moving fast themselves, from whom you can learn. So I think a lot of the learning in the space has got to be, as sort of Chris said, a bit of a autodidactic process. You have to take the ownership on yourself. Even if we feed you something, it's only going to be so good for so long in a lot of cases.
And so with that, do you think that Web3 is a skill that everyone in the company needs to have? If your company isn't is not a Web3 direct company, is it a skill that the company needs? Is it a skill that everyone needs, kind of like coding? Where are you on that? Who needs to know about Web3? And maybe I'll start with you, Isaac.
So if I take out my crystal ball and I make a bit of a bet, I think in 5 years, maybe a little bit more, I don't think you're going to have that much of a distinction between Web 3 and Web 2 or anything else. So I would, with that kind of assumption, I think everybody has to learn about Web 3 if you're playing in the technology space. This feels a lot like the late 90s. So there used to, this may sound really strange to some, at least younger people here, there used to be dedicated internet venture capital funds, okay? They would call themselves, we invest in internet companies. And there were really successful, well-heeled, established venture firms that said, we don't touch that internet stuff, we don't do that. It sounds ridiculous today, but that was very much the case. And then a few years after that, no one made the distinction. I suspect the same thing is going to happen here. So today, while absolutely you have crypto-native funds, and you have still very, very well-heeled, successful, or traditionally successful venture funds that really won't touch crypto and Web3, I can't imagine that they're not going to fundamentally morph. I mean, what is the internet? It was a set of low-level protocols that gave you an interesting distributed way to deliver data and to deliver data. And what are we looking at right now? The same thing, a bunch of low-level protocols, but they're in many ways much more sophisticated and powerful because they can deliver not just data and software, but smart contracts and and decentralized authority that enables so much stuff that goes so far, many extra dimensions over above what happened with Web 1. So I would kind of say, yes, you need to learn, you need to be familiar with Web 3 at the technical level and at the business level if you're going to be in the tech space for the next 5 to 10 years. Today, maybe not so much, but don't wait too long.
Yeah, I totally agree with Isaac about I think what will happen is these technologies will just become invisible. Like even now, you don't know if you're using an NFT or just some other kind of token when you're playing games or gambling or whatever you're doing. And so, I think that'll just happen more and more. So I know in the business school, like this stuff will spread out. Like, I've taught accounting, and like you can't really, go be an auditor without understanding blockchain because your companies you're auditing are going to be blockchain, and you're doing taxes for companies with blockchain. So yeah, I agree. It's gonna become ubiquitous, but then it'll become invisible.
Yeah, so I agree with everything that's been said up here. I think, it's going to blend. Like, everyone, does Web 2 and whatever Web 2 is right now. Everyone did Web 1, it was Web 1. Web 3 is going to be the same thing, but I think everyone needs to understand, again, about the potentials, like what you can do with it, but they don't necessarily need to understand like how it works. Like, not like many people in this room, I'm sure, understand how the internet or Web 2 works, but you don't necessarily need to be an employee at a company necessarily know how that functions. One thing to say though, if you are a Web 2 company now, we have an economic downturn. If you can't shoehorn things in, obviously, but if you can have some sort of Web 3 strategy attached to your more traditional company, it's going to be easier to raise funds. And again, you can't shoehorn. You can't look for look for a problem, look for the solution, whatever. You have to you can't shoehorn things in. If you got a legit way to go to Web 3, it's going to be way easier to raise funds right now.
So with that, what advice would you give anyone out there that wanted to dive deep on Web 3?
Just like learning by doing. Again, like I said, honestly, what do you like? Just very basically, I mean, not everyone's going to code, but you if you're going to want to dive in, you're going to need to know Solidity, which is the Ethereum, for smart contracts, Ethereum programming for smart contracts. At least know how it functions. You don't need to be out coding tons of contracts. So, but what can you do with it? I mean, it's just it's a mutable contract, so you can really do anything with it. And then maybe look to build a concept for something very basic. I mean, DeFi right now is something that's really well known. I'm sure you can find some composable templates out there where you can kind of construct something together, and that you'd actually then learn by doing it. So that's we're all talking about education up here. I'm doing something at UW. I just got Techstars. Christy's got got Portland State. But yeah, go out and kind of forge your own path right now, and the stuff will come. But again, composable Lego pieces right now, probably for DeFi or something like that's the best way to teach yourself how to do things.
Awesome, Christy.
Yeah, I agree with both Chris and Isaac on this, and you kind of touched on you learn from the experts, and so you've all heard crypto Twitter. You find the people that are being followed a lot by other people that you admire in that space. That's a great way to sort of keep in touch with what's happening. LinkedIn more and more is too. And then in terms of diving into projects, you can there's crypto zombies, if you don't know about that, to just get that first taste of Solidity, but there are hackathons everywhere, and you don't have to be a tech person to join these teams, and you could just learn so much on the hackathons, and the tech people want a diversity of thinkers on those teams anyway, to think about the use cases and think about the design and think about the users, the customers, and all that stuff. So yeah, jumping into hackathons is great. Getting on Discord, and you can contribute to projects on Discord. If there's something you hear about that's interesting, you can start following and then start, adding, commenting on things, and sort of eventually you'll understand it well enough to really contribute. Yeah, so there's just many, many ways, and none of them are kind of the traditional way you would think about learning something.
Yeah, no, thank you. And Isaac, you kind of touched about this on the importance of Web3 as a future skill, but do you have any advice for people who wanting to dive deep on Web3?
Everything that they said, for sure. And so if it's truly new to you for the first time, I think you should probably understand why the blockchain and why trustless transaction sort of authentication is such an important concept, and why it is such a major breakthrough in computer science, which is why it's so important. Once you get that, I mean, here's one framework or one approach to think about taking is figure out which Web3 primitive really grabs you and interests you. They're so fascinating, whether it's an NFT or a DAO or the way that tokenomics and tokenization work. Just find one of those things and just go deep there, and then join the right Discord or Telegram groups, and get mentorship, and just talk to people. There's obviously an eternity of videos on every possible topic. Again, they will quickly become dated in a lot of cases, but I think I'd find one of those. They're each so interesting in their own right. Get in one of those that'll start to pull you in all the other directions.
Awesome, thank you. So our last question for each of you then is, do you have any resources or links or call to action for our audience to learn more about you, your programs, and or Web3? So Isaac, I'll start with you.
Okay, so I have to do my commercial. If you like this kind of stuff, if you like these industry gatherings, you like networking, which I really think you should if you want to learn about Web3, I would encourage you to take a look at either the Filecoin Techstars or Techstars Seattle LinkedIn or Twitter pages, and we have a big event coming up the week of June 13th. So June 14th through June 16th is Techstars Interstellar Week here in Seattle. We'll actually have a good amount of Web3 content as well as a big community gathering on Wednesday night. But our Filecoin programs, end of program celebration and showcases on Thursday the 16th, I think at 4 p.m. at the Seattle NFT Museum, which if you haven't been there is awesome. And you should come and check all this stuff out. But it's a great way to get into the community and meet more and more folks. You can come meet the founders who are in the current Filecoin program. So that's a good place to start.
Awesome. Christy?
And so I'll promote my program too. So our program at Portland State, it's completely online, and so anyone can take it around the world. We will be accepting crypto eventually. It's quite universities are very slow moving in that way. But we've got a great board of advisors. We have expert guests every week. Today, actually, this afternoon, we've got this guy, Philip Rosedale, who is the creator of Second Life, coming to speak. Yeah, and so, it's just, we have great resources. Students go out and do real projects with real companies. We get great speakers in, and so I think it's hard to beat like that university experience for really making those industry connections if you're interested in the business side. So the way to find us is you could find us through Portland State, or you can look up my last name. I'm on the program. It starts with a Y, Youthas. Only my family has that last name, apparently, so I'm pretty easy to find online. So, yeah, I'd love to hear from you.
Awesome. And Chris?
Okay, yeah, I don't have a particular program to point to right now. Follow me, Chris Bambury, on LinkedIn. We do have our class project coming out of Stealth pretty soon, which has a huge educational component. So, but I'm not here to shill it right now. And so, like follow me on LinkedIn. My Twitter is SmoothCB too, my old gamer tag from Halo like 20 years ago. So yeah, and so you can follow me there as well. But always down to have conversations. Honestly, what I do with the education at school, it can be done anywhere. And I don't have a program just generally yet, but I have something that I've done in a university level, and it worked. And so I'm definitely down to talk to people and kind of talk about that process too.
Well, thank you so much. I know that we're at time, so we'll invite Jonathan back in, but please help me give our panelists a round of applause. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Let's change the world together, right?